$200 million is going to the U.S. Agency for International Development's Gender Equity and Equality Action Fund.
Are you kidding me?
No, it gets better. $32.5 million is going to the United Nations Population Fund.
I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjekovic. And we are unapologetically outspoken. Hey everyone, happy Monday. So as predicted, Congress passed a spending package in literally the 11th hour on Saturday morning. And the time was actually supposed to expire on Friday at midnight, but the bill was signed by Biden on Saturday afternoon. And the bottom line is that they avoided a government shutdown. So
did we not call this like exactly play by play?
Yeah, exactly. And how much is this bill? It's $1.2 trillion. And it passed in the Senate at 2 a.m. on Saturday morning. And the vote was 74-24, which went fairly smoothly in contrast to the House, which also, as we predicted, was a complete shit show. And before the vote even went to the Senate, it barely passed the House by the required 2/3 majority of the vote. And the final vote was 286-134. And this was on Friday morning. And it was a fight on the Republican side with 101 voting for it and 112 voting against it. And then House Democrats easily passed it with like 185 for it and 22 against it. And according to the Associated Press, House Speaker Mike Johnson brought the measure to the floor before a majority of Republicans had even voted for it. So that caused a lot of drama on this side of the House because it violated the 72-hour rule that's supposed to give lawmakers time to read legislation before it goes to a vote. And instead, they only had a few hours to look at a bill that was like more than 1,000 pages. So who knows what the fuck is actually in there? And the Freedom Caucus called it, quote, a massive spending bill drafted in secrecy and dropped on us in the middle of the night, end quote. So Rep. Eric Burleson from Missouri called it a complete and utter surrender. House Freedom Caucus Chairman Bob Good from Virginia said it's worse than spending when Democrats controlled Congress under Pelosi. And of course, can't have any kind of congressional meeting go by without some comments from Marjorie Taylor Greene. So she filed a motion to get rid of Johnson the same way they ousted McCarthy when the Freedom Caucus was unhappy with him caving to the left. So Congress is now on like a 2-week recess. I guess they need a vacation after all their hard work and effort. So the Ditch Mike Johnson campaign is on hold, but Greene told reporters that she filed the motion to vacate as a warning to Johnson. And she said, quote, it's time for our conference to choose a new speaker, end quote. And then Rep. Andy Ogles of Tennessee also agreed, and he said, quote, some will say the Republicans are in the majority of the House, but it's clear that the Democrats own the speaker's gavel, and the passage of the bill will likely determine who controls the House and will most certainly determine who the next speaker is, end quote. And then we had comments from Matt Gaetz, who basically said, if this happens, the House is going to end up with a Democrat speaker, and we'd be fucked. So are we surprised by any of this, Stephanie?
No, this happens every single time. We totally called it. And you know what? Like, I don't blame the Democrats because they know, like, the same pattern keeps happening. They know if they hold out, they're going to get whatever the fuck they want. So who knows what kind of freedoms we lost in this big spending bill because they always hide crazy shit in there. But the truth is, it's really not like the Democrats or the Republicans. From now on, like, it is the Uniparty. Plain and simple, it is the Uniparty. They control the government and they do whatever is going to profit them, and they could care less about our country or the people in it. And before we go too much further, I'm going to play a short clip from our president on how he thinks, this bill went. So let's listen to this mumble jumble.
Yeah, they failed again, and we stopped them. But I'm under no illusions that they'll be back again. Where I come from, when you make a deal, you give your word, you keep it. You give your word, you say, I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do, and you do it. You keep it. You keep your word. And I expect the Republican Speaker and Republicans in Congress to honor their word and keep the deal they made months ago when they tried to threaten us with almost international bankruptcy by not paying our debts. That includes comments made for fully funded services for our veterans and fully fund the needs of defense of our nation. You know, protect we have transformational investments we're already making to deal with the climate crisis. We are, protect Medicare's ability and power to negotiate lower prescription drug rates. We pay the highest prescription drug prices in the world. We're finally making progress. Although the Speaker and an overwhelming majority of the Congress have steadfastly supported Ukraine to defend itself against the aggression and brutality of the Russians' attack on women and children, in addition to the military in Ukraine, there's no Ukraine funding in this agreement. Despite that, I did not believe we could let millions of Americans go through the pain of a government shutdown. But let's be clear. I hope my friends on the other side keep their word about support for Ukraine. They said they're going to support Ukraine in a separate vote. We cannot, under any circumstance, allow American support for Ukraine to be interrupted. I fully expect the Speaker to keep his commitment to secure the passage and support needed to help Ukraine as they defend themselves against.
It's all about Ukraine.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would expect them to keep their word to support the fucking border.
Well, yeah, he kept saying keep their word. Their word was that we're not going to fucking pass your Ukraine spending if you don't protect our border. But of course, like, he doesn't know what the hell's going on. And then, like, in another part of that, he was like going on about the MAGA extremists again. I'm like, oh, are we doing this again? Like, the guy is just, it's just so hard to listen. But, if you keep your word, then you got to keep your word, because if you make a word, then you got to keep it. And I don't know what he was talking about there, but I think Kamala must have wrote his speech for him. But I want to play one more clip. Okay. So the Freedom Caucus held a press conference, and everyone should go listen to the whole thing, because there was like just so much in there that I agreed with. And I feel like these are the people that actually give a shit about what's going on. But I'm going to play a clip from Republican Rep Tim Burchett of Tennessee. And, he said that this bill is the beginning of the end of America. And I don't know, I kind of think he's right. So let me play the clip.
First took office and this border issue was already an issue. I can remember we started talking then, and I said, no border, no budget. That's how important it is. That's how important it is to the American people. We talk about having the majority and what that means. I don't care. If we lose our country, it's not worth it. It is absolutely not worth it. And I talk about my folks all the time, and I always think about the sacrifices they made. And I remember my daddy talking about an island that they hit, and he was really afraid. He had a bad feeling, but he knew he had to do the right thing, and he did the right thing, and he was victorious. And if we do not do the right thing in this occasion, we will lose our country. You are seeing the beginning of the end for the United States of America. And I stand with these wonderful men and women on this day, and I stand with pride, because they are doing, dadgummit, they're doing the right thing. And this is the right thing. We've got to make a stand. We've got to take our country back. Dadgummit, if you don't like the people in office, vote their asses out. I don't care if you play golf with them. I don't care if you go to church with them. Get them out of here. They are ruining your country. Don't let them come home and throw you the red meat and say, oh, I'm voting against this, I'm voting against that. That's a bunch of garbage. They are selling your country out for the Uniparty, for these national chambers of commerce that wreck every dadgum thing. Look, they want somebody on your roof that doesn't speak the language, that is not from this country, that is not here legally. Because you know what happens when they fall off? They kick their ass out, they throw them to the curb, they're in the emergency room. You and I are paying for their health care, and they don't give a damn about them one bit. And that's what these national chambers of commerce, that's what the Uniparty is. Write that in your dadgum newspapers. We've got to take our country back. Thank you, Mr.
I think it's such a good point, though. Like,
I'm sorry, I haven't heard the word dadgum in a really long time.
I know. It like cracked me up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this sweet man. Yeah, but like, we always talk about them wanting illegals in this country, like, to sway the election. But he has a really good point. They want cheap labor. And who is lobbying? Who's paying these politicians? Businesses, Chamber of Commerce, like he was saying, they want cheap labor. So they're all bought and paid for. Like, That is the Uniparty. We have lost this country to the Uniparty, just like he said. And again, like it is not Democrats or Republicans, it is both. It doesn't matter, which side of the aisle you're on. It matters whether you're bought and paid for. And it's these career politicians that like their whole career, that's how they've worked their way up and gotten support and gotten money for their campaigns. And like they don't give a shit. They just don't. And like I just don't understand when you're talking about spending trillions of dollars, and we know it's 1,000 pages. We know there's going to be so much like careless spending just all throughout that. How can we keep going at that rate? And why is it only a small group of people that seem to give a damn and like actually want to talk about it? It's like good for the members of the Freedom Caucus. And you know what? Good for Marjorie Taylor Greene. I hope she makes their life a living hell because like Tim Burchett said, it doesn't matter. It does not matter if we lose the House majority because the establishment Uniparty is going to win regardless. They always stick together regardless of who's in the majority. So you might as well at least put up a fight rather than just like lay over and let them fuck the country. So I'm glad that they're wreaking some havoc.
Yeah, and I love Marjorie Taylor Greene. I really do. Sometimes she's really out there with some of the stuff she comes up with, but she never hesitates to speak her mind. And
Yeah.
since we are also unapologetically outspoken, like I cannot help but support her.
Yep.
But where is this money going, Stephanie? And by the way,
only
like
knows.
this $1.2 trillion, this is the spending bill that was supposed to have been passed like 6 months ago. So this money only covers the budget until the end of the fiscal year, which is in September. So is this like 1.2 million just to cover the next 6 months? And then we have another clown show budget process right before the November elections?
Yep. That's
It's
exactly
insane.
the same pattern every time.
Yeah. But it's like, where is the money going? Do you know? Because I probably read at least 30 MSM articles talking about the budget, and none of them broke down the spending. And the only place that I saw any real numbers was in an Epic Times article. So I'm going to tell you guys how they broke it down. So the Pentagon is getting $825 billion. And
the Pentagon that's never passed an audit and is missing like $3 trillion. Oh, okay.
That's the one. Yep. They are getting 825 billion. 108 billion of that is being allocated for security cooperation with Taiwan, and 300 million is going to Ukraine. But this is not direct spending for Ukraine and Taiwan. It's US security assistance, whatever that means. I don't know. According to the article, it was saying direct funding for Ukraine and Taiwan, as Biden was saying in his garbled speech, is not in the spending bill. So this is going to come in an entirely separate bill that Congress is probably going to dick around forever trying to pass, this like supplemental assistance package, because good on Republicans, they won't approve it without stricter border measures in exchange. So I'm guessing we're just going to see more money being magically made out of thin air for a supplemental bill because, as Biden made it very clear, the money train to Ukraine is not anywhere near its end. But what is being covered in this bill also? There's $3.3 billion going to Israel, which I guess we've been doing for the past few years, so that's standard. $1.8 billion is going to the Treasury Department, and $12.3 billion is going to the fucking IRS. DHS is getting $61.8 billion. And I will say some things on the plus side. So they're getting increased funding for Border Patrol, including hiring 22,000 more agents and getting 8,000 more detention beds for migrants. 400 million is going towards combating the fentanyl problem, and then 2.2 billion for processing asylum seekers. We wouldn't be spending that 2.2 billion if we just fucking sent them away at the border.
And what does that even mean? Does that mean like allowing more in, like processing more? Or does that mean like actually taking care of the ones that are in here? It's like no one knows because no one has read the freaking thing.
No, but I was reading in The Hill that like Senate Republicans were pushing for the bill to include a measure that they were calling the Lake and Riley Act. And the whole point of it was to require that any illegal migrants who are charged with theft-related crimes would be detained. But it didn't pass because they had so many time constraints, since the Senate didn't have any time to look at the bill and like propose changes before they had to vote. But I guess we are trying to make amends for the way Biden fucked the Afghanistan withdrawal, because the bill does award 12,000 special immigrant visas to Afghan allies who helped the US during the 20 years of war in Afghanistan. And then last week, we talked about how our northern border is just as much of a shit show as our southern border. And it's actually the primary access point where most of the confirmed terror watch list migrants are coming into the US. So I was glad to see that Border Patrol funding does include $3 million for a new security center on the northern border, and it's going to be at Selfridge Air National Guard Base. And there's also a ban on future funding to UNRWA, which we've talked about before. That's the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. And remember, they had their ties to the initial attacks on Israel last October. So I guess we're not supporting them at least through 2025.
Good.
But Stephanie, do you really think that this bill is going to do anything to help our border situation? Because I don't. And now we have this illegal migrant influencer on TikTok who's encouraging more fucking illegal migrants, especially from Venezuela, to come to America because they get to squat in empty houses now.
Oh yeah. I was very pissed off, by the way, like coming up with notes for this episode, because I'm like, it just highlights how bad the American taxpayers are screwed.
Yep.
And before we get into that, like, I have a legitimate question, and I don't think you're going to know the answer, because I don't know that if anyone knows the answer, but I'm just going to put it out there and maybe someone smarter than me can explain it. But okay, when they pass these bills that like are 1,000 pages and no one knows what's in them, who's putting it together? Like, you don't just put together 1,000 pages in 24 hours, right? Like,
Well, I will say this because I did make some notes like from another new article that I saw this morning that broke down some more of the spending. And so you have like states that are putting in, like, Congress members from certain states are putting in things that they want for their states into this bill. So hidden in like the overall money, there's like 400 million going here and 300 million going there. And I'm going to
right.
break
So
some
then
of
it
that
ends
down a
up
little bit
becoming
later.
like an omnibus bill,
Yes, that's
which
what
like
it
I
is.
thought that was the whole thing when they kicked out what's his face, Kevin McCarthy. I thought they said from here on out, like, we're not doing that. We're just going to do bill by bill. Like, did any of this actually take effect? No.
No, they only did bill by bill because they couldn't agree to everything in time. So they had to break it up to keep doing the fucking government shutdown avoidance time frame. Like,
Like, this is just, it's insanity. And anyone that's like okay with this is not paying attention. Like, I think you're too nice and you're just assuming good in people, because I guarantee there's like so much in there that's really bad for the American taxpayers. So yeah, I don't think that this is gonna fix the border, obviously. Like, it's not. But even if it did, it doesn't fix the fact that we already have 20 million illegals in every corner of this country. What are we going to do about that? I don't know. But yeah, you mentioned the migrant influencer. Okay. This story is insane. Insane. So this guy is a TikTok influencer. His name, I think you pronounce it Lionel Moreno. He's a Venezuelan migrant, and he now lives in a nice, cozy suburb in Columbus, Ohio. So good luck, Columbus. But he amassed a huge following. Last I checked, it was 500,000 people. It might be a lot more, because he made a viral video that's gotten over 3 million views, where he's telling migrants how they can invade unoccupied homes, invoking U.S. squatter rights. And like I said, this video has just taken off. I have no idea how many views it's at, but so many people are reposting it. It's all over the internet. And he says that if a home is unoccupied, they can seize it, and that he already has African friends who have seized 7 homes. So the squatter laws vary from state to state. So I recommend everyone that's listening, go and look at what your squatter laws are. Like, I am serious. This could affect every single one of us right now. So, for example, in New York, squatter rights kick in after occupying a home for just 30 days. So, just last week, a Queens woman, Adele Andalaro, was arrested for changing the locks on squatters who took over the home she inherited from her parents after they passed away. So, like, her parents die. She's dealing with that. She's in the process of selling the home and they take it over. And she like goes there and sees that the locks are changed. And not only that, they even installed a brand new front door. So she shows up with the deed to the house and she finds two men in the home. And the men, the squatters, call the police on her. But when the police showed up, the men couldn't provide any documentation of being a tenant or being there for more than 30 days. So the police end up escorting one of the men off the property. And then like the other one was taken away in handcuffs, but it's unclear. I don't think he was like actually charged with anything. Well, then the police warn Adele that she can't change the locks on the home that she has the deed to, or she will be arrested. And so when the police leave, she changes the locks anyways. And as this is happening, a third man comes and busts the door open, forcing him his way into the home. And she's got the whole thing on video. So then she calls the police. They come again, and she's the one that ends up getting arrested. Like, this is insanity. And this poor woman, I can't even imagine what she's going through. And now, like, on top of losing her parents and everything else, she has to go through the court system, which will most likely, be requiring her to pay a large sum to a lawyer, I would assume. And who knows if she's going to actually be able to get the house back. And like, just think about this for a second. Whenever you're selling a house, most of the time, there's going to be a period where the house is vacant while it's on the market. Like that happened when I sold my house. We moved to Florida. It was sitting for a few months. Now these migrants know this. It's gone viral. Like the word is out. So you better believe that they're going to be looking to take over these homes. And next thing you know, you're in the middle of a nightmare like this poor woman, and you're the one getting arrested. And like Tara, I don't get it. Like, why the fuck are there squatter rights in the first place? Like, I don't even understand why that's a thing. Like, all this is going to do is incentivize people not only to come into the country illegally, but now go and occupy the home of a tax-paying citizen, and you just get to live there without paying a dime.
Yeah, this was actually one of the things that I was very frustrated with when I was a cop, because I dealt with this multiple times when I was working in Washington State. They have like very liberal squatters' rights. I couldn't tell you what they are right now because I don't remember, but I, on multiple occasions, got calls where I had to go to a home where squatters were in the home, and the homeowners who didn't live in the state, they lived outside, or they lived somewhere else. It was a vacant property, and they couldn't kick them out of their home. And as a cop, we couldn't do anything because it's a civil matter. It's not a police matter. So other than like violating something like this woman supposedly did and getting arrested, like it is a civil issue that can take months to resolve in the court, which is absolutely fucking insane. And I'm convinced that we live in upside down world, because there's just no other explanation for it. And I'm sorry, but what I read about this Moreno dude, I was so fucking disgusted. Like, how does someone like this get 500,000 plus followers? I feel it speaks to how completely lost our country is. And this guy is proudly referring to squatting in someone else's home as the American dream. And he calls Biden mi papa because immigrants get so much free shit. Like, he blatantly tells his followers he doesn't like to work, but it's okay because in America, you can get everything for free. And yet, you and I will post patriotic content on social media and it gets banned, while this piece of shit is getting wealthy off American taxpayers and the government's giving him free shit and he's promoting it all on social media. Like, it's just fucking disgusting.
Totally disgusting. It makes me so mad. And it's scary because it literally could happen to you. Like, it could happen to any one of us. And what are we going to do?
All
we're
they have to
fucked.
do is go online and look and see what houses are for sale and
Yeah.
then go scope out the neighborhoods and find a house and fucking move in.
Right. It's crazy. And
Yeah.
anyone with a vacation home, a rental property,
Mhm.
anything like that, like I'm sure, you got to be really worried right now because what are you going to do?
I can't remember where this was, but it was a couple months ago. I remember reading an article. I don't know if maybe New York or Chicago, but there was like a vacant house where they were having parties and like I think it was like a full prostitution ring. And they had even brought like horses onto the property at these parties. Yeah, we never talked about it on the podcast, but I think it was a couple months ago.
Oh my God,
And
that's
it was the same
crazy.
kind of situation. Yeah, squatting in this home and they couldn't get rid of him.
Yeah, there was an abandoned house we used to go to in high school. Like everyone said it was haunted. So we would like go there. And there were
Mhm.
squatters there one time, scared the shit out of us because we were like, oh my God, like these people are going to kill us. But it was crazy. But yeah, like speaking of complete nonsense, wait until you hear this. Since 2021, 200,000 asylum cases have been dropped because DHS conveniently lost the paperwork. Like, how is that even possible? How is that
Well,
even
wait.
possible?
If you can lose 800,000 migrant children, it's got to be pretty easy to lose paperwork.
That's true. That is true. Like, why do we even have paperwork? Like, isn't everything digital now? I mean, come on. And it's like, I bet that the IRS never loses like paperwork on tax fraud cases. And
Definitely not.
here's the thing, what I was reading was that most of these asylum cases would end in deportation. But now what? Like, now these people can just stay here and like, sorry, we lost your paperwork. Like, you're good to go. I mean, this is insane. And so now there's this like whole movement on TikTok of people saying that they're done. They're not going to pay their taxes anymore because they don't agree with this bullshit. They don't agree with the way the government is using our tax dollars to basically pay for the lifestyle of illegals. But like always, the American taxpayer is the one that's going to get screwed because I can guarantee the IRS won't lose their paperwork and they'll go after them. So it's like you can let all these illegals off the hook, but not the American taxpayers when they put their foot down and say they've had enough. So, but it's like
But
growing, Tara. Like there are people that are legitimately like done paying taxes.
but the problem is it's not going to be enough people.
Right.
It's like when I was a cop and you would have like cops that would be like, okay, we don't agree with what the department's doing, so we're going to do the blue flu, right? And not show up for work. Well, a small portion would not show up for work. You have to have the whole fucking department not show up for it to be effective. You have to have every fucking American taxpayer stop paying taxes for it to be effective. Like there has to be a mass uprising of people, not a small subset.
I feel like the only thing that does work that we've seen over and over again are boycotts, like of
Mhm.
products. Like now it's
Yeah.
like Kellogg's. Everyone's boycotting Kellogg's because the guy was like, the CEO was like, oh, just eat cereal for dinner, like with inflation. And they're like, are you fucking kidding me? Like eat cereal for dinner? It's like Marie Antoinette saying, oh, just like let them eat cake while he's on his like $1 billion yacht. So anyhow, like if when you go to the store here, the Kellogg's aisle, it's like buy one box, get four free because like no one's buying it. So like that stuff works. I just wish that we could get organized with things on a bigger scale, that matter a little bit more than cereal.
I actually like cereal for dinner.
I do too. I love cereal, but not anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah. But like this whole thing, like going back to the border issue, right? It's only going to get worse because Congress can't come up with like any kind of agreement on effective border policies. And this has nothing to do with the spending bill, but I want to point out something else because while we're dicking around with nonsense here in America, China is building their biggest military presence yet. And there was a hearing last Wednesday with the House Armed Services Committee. And I want to play a clip from that hearing because I find this all incredibly disturbing.
Thanks, sir. So again, with the capabilities that the PRC are producing, delivering, and continue to support, their numbers and their capability and capacity are increasing. That's a conscious decision by the CCP to support a 7.2% defense increase despite an economy that is on the decline. And I agree, we are at a point where the capability being produced does have a a quality all of its own as it applies with capacity. It is the world's largest Navy right now. It is soon to be the world's largest Air Force as they continue to produce. So across all joint force capabilities, I don't support a reduction of capacity in the theater so that we can continue to deliver the deterrent effects we need.
Thank you. I mean, this is not.
Okay, short clip, but the guy who was speaking is U.S. Navy Admiral John Aquilino. I hope I said that right. I listened to his name multiple times. But anyway, he was testifying at this hearing to Congress about China's likely impending takeover of Taiwan by 2027. And at one point in the hearing, he basically said that the PLA, the People's Liberation Army in China, that they are like growing to a scale that we have not seen since World War II. And this is occurring on land, sea, air, space, cyber, and information domains. And he talked about how China's military has added more than 400 fighter aircraft, 20 warships. They've doubled their missile inventory. They've increased their number of satellites by 50%. They've more than doubled their nuclear warhead arsenal. And all of this has taken place in the last 3 years. How, quote, coincidental that this is all going on since Biden took office. And yet here in our own country, we can't recruit enough people to join our military branches because nobody wants to be part of the fucking woke Biden DOD.
Well, yeah, and here's another question I have. Okay, like if the Pentagon is missing whatever it was, 2-3 trillion, and then we just gave them another like 800 some odd billion dollars, like why aren't they making us the biggest, baddest country? Or are they, and they're just not telling us? Like that's what I have to tell myself to like keep my anxiety from going through the roof. Like they've got to be putting that money to good use, right? I don't know. I don't know.
That's a really great question.
I'm so
But
naive.
I'm going to tell you where some of the spending is going, because as you brought up earlier, like where do they even have time to write all this shit, right? So there has to be DEI spending in this bill. And there absolutely is. So I only found this in a Washington Times article. And so here you go, Stephanie. 200 million is going to the U.S. Agency for International Development's Gender Equity and Equality Action Fund.
Are you kidding me?
No, it gets better. 32.5 million is going to the United Nations Population Fund. We've talked about them before.
Population fund. Don't they want to depopulate us?
Yes, because they have an extremist abortion agenda. Then you have New Jersey reps Cory Booker and Robert Mendez, who managed to get approval in the spending bill for $400,000 going to the Garden State Equality in New Jersey. Do you know what this is for? It's for free gender-affirming garments without the need for parental consent, so that trans people and confused minors can basically get government subsidies to buy chest binders, or they call them gaffs, I guess, to help minimize the appearance of a crotch bulge. There's $2 million going to La Clinica, an Oregon clinic that provides gender-affirming hormone therapy for adults and children. $845,000 is going to Envision U of Denver, which is an LGBTQ mental health organization that hosts drag shows. $740,000 is going to a similar location in Seattle called Entre Hermanos, and another $850,000 is going to LGBTQ senior housing in Massachusetts so that they can create the first ever LGBTQ affirming affordable senior housing development in New England. Stephanie, this is where our tax dollars are going.
Oh my God. Wow. This is jogging my memory. I think in Marjorie Taylor Greene's like rant, she said another thing that was in the bill was funding for abortions up to 9 months. And I think we might have to do an episode on that, because I like found myself down a rabbit hole again with Planned Parenthood, and there is some fucked up shit happening. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like black market selling stuff through these abortion clinics. So we might have to do like a whole episode on that. But like, this is what I mean. It's like the Republicans always talk against this stuff, and yet this nonsense gets passed. Like it just it makes me feel like there's no hope. Like, what's the point of even like talking about it when they're just going to pass it anyways? It's maddening.
I was trying to quickly find it. Yeah, okay. So it was Rhode Island Democratic Senators Jack Reed and Sheldon Whitehouse. It's 1.8 million for Providence's Women and Infants Hospital, which performs surgical abortions up to 22 weeks into pregnancy.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what they do with that is it's awful. It is absolutely awful. And the fact that we're funding it makes me sick. Like, I am all for, if you need to have an abortion, do it within a reasonable time. 22 weeks. Like, I've had 3 kids. I've seen the ultrasounds. That is a freaking baby, and it's disgusting. And I don't mean to get on a tangent, but it's just, it makes me mad that my taxpayers are going to something like that.
Yeah. And that's only what I found in that one article. Like, I guarantee you there's more absolutely nonsense shit that our money's going to. But I do want to point out a couple provisions that I thought were positive. So, number one, the bill prevents the federal government from banning gas stoves. And I'm honestly surprised that Biden even signed it, considering his total hard on for the gas stove ban. And then it also puts restrictions on which unofficial flags can be flown over US diplomatic facilities, which I can only assume is because of the fucking outrage over the LGBTQIA XYZ pride flag that was flown higher than the American flag at the White House during the shit show Free the Titties lawn party fiasco at Pride Month last year. So I was reading that article in The Hill that was saying a White House spokesperson is calling this, quote, a policy targeting LGBTQIA plus Americans, and President Biden believed it was inappropriate to abuse the process that was essential to keep the government open by including this provision, end quote. And I'm sorry, but I think it was absolutely inappropriate to abuse the process to keep the government open by including a bunch of other bullshit provisions. But as for the rest of the bill, like, some departments, I guess, are actually receiving less spending than they did in 2023, like DHS, Department of Education, and State Department. They're all getting billions, but it's less than they got in 2023. And apparently there was enough money to spend $200 million on a new FBI headquarters in Maryland. And I guess Republicans aren't too happy about that
That
one.
was another thing they said, like, absolutely not. You guys are corrupt as fuck. And here they got it.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh.
And like, okay, here's totally unrelated, but I don't know if you saw this, Stephanie. Tennessee lawmakers are trying to pass a bill to ban chemtrails.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in our chemtrails episode, we talked about New Hampshire. And now, yeah, like the bill passed in the state Senate last Monday, but it hasn't passed in the House. And Business Insider is reporting that Tennessee is trying to pass this bill based on a conspiracy theory and not the truth. But we did that episode about chemtrails and weather modification a few weeks ago, and our episode was shadow banned on Apple and completely banned on TikTok. So if you guys didn't hear that episode, try to go and find it. I had to search and search to find like what was going on with this particular bill in Tennessee, because of course the mainstream media is full of shit referring to chemtrails as a conspiracy theory, saying that it's just merely water vapor, which, like, when we talked about this on our episode, we said like the information is out there on the public on the NOAA.gov website that no, it is not just water vapor. But anyhow, I did find some information in an article from the Oak Ridger, which said, quote, the bill claims it is documented the federal government or other entities acting on the federal government's behalf or at the federal government's request may conduct geoengineering experiments by intentionally dispersing chemicals into the atmosphere. And those activities may occur within the state of Tennessee, end quote. So this legislation would ban the practice in Tennessee. And the article goes on to say, quote, the intentional injection, release, or dispersion by any means of chemicals, chemical compounds, substances, or apparatus within the borders of the state into the atmosphere with the express purpose of affecting temperature, weather, or the intensity of sunlight is prohibited. So that's like right out of the bill. And it's scheduled to go to the House Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee on Wednesday. But, just like the mainstream media, the rest of the article after that was all about how this is one big conspiracy theory. And I just feel like they're totally gaslighting the public. Like every state should be paying attention to this and putting this in place. And where the hell are the climate activists? Like they need to wake the fuck up and get on this instead of worrying about eating bugs, because this is actually a real threat to our air, our water, our food, our planet when they're dispersing all these chemicals in the air day after day. And like you said, like this is the most censored topic we've ever had. And I feel like that's a red flag. That's when like they don't want people knowing about this. And that's when we should like really dive into it. Because like I said, it's all out there on the government website.
Yeah,
So
they don't want you to know about weather modification, but they do want you to know how to squat in an abandoned home.
that's totally okay. Yeah, it's totally okay. And it's weather modification. It's just water vapor. It's just water vapor. Like anyone is actually going to believe that water vapor sticks in the air, for 24 hours and doesn't dissipate. But anyhow, that's a very censored topic. So be careful if you post anything about that on social media. But go listen to that episode because it was very informative. So I'm pretty pissed off now after going through the details of this bill. So I'm going to go and just like chill out for a little bit and decompress. And we'll see everyone back here next time. Thanks for tuning in. If you're sick of all the crazy shit going on in our country and you want to express your support and patriotism for the show, head on over to our Etsy store at UO Patriot Chicks and check out our new stickers. The link can also be found on our website. If you love the show and you want exclusive episodes, support the podcast and join the conversation by becoming a member of our Patreon community. We'll be posting weekly member-only podcast episodes and content that isn't available on the weekly podcast. Every Patreon member will also get a free Unapologetically Outspoken sticker and updates about our new sticker release before they're made public. And be sure to follow us on TikTok at Unapologetically Outspoken. And if you haven't done so already, please rate and review the podcast. The more you support us, the more people we can reach. So help us spread the word.